In 2021, in an Arab country, a young woman started working the night shift at the intensive care unit in a government hospital. But the very job meant to save lives soon turned into a nightmare, one that terrified her so deeply she abandoned medicine altogether. So what comes to your mind when you hear about someone who studied for years, worked incredibly hard just to land a job, only to suddenly quit it without warning? For reasons no one can really explain, a short, strange story, one I guarantee you've never heard before, so don't forget to hit that like button, my friend, and let's dive into today's episode. Peace be upon you. My name is Ali Ahmed. Our story today comes from a young woman named Hanney. In 2021, after years of dedication and study, Hanney achieved her dream of becoming a doctor. It wasn't wealth that motivated her, it was her lifelong passion to serve and help people. Born and raised in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, her journey is nothing short of inspiring. Back then, I landed a job at a hospital, but it wasn't in Riyadh. It was in Al Dalam, a city nearly an hour's drive from the capital. And since it was a government job, I didn't really get the chance to overthink my options. I simply got the offer, accepted it, and started. Here's the catch. I was hired to work in the ICU on a rotating shift. Sounds comfortable, right? A stress-free job, just supervising patients in intensive care. My weekly schedule looked almost like a dream. Just 2 short shifts every Sunday and Tuesday. But then Thursday arrived and everything flipped. I had to stay locked inside the hospital from Thursday morning all the way until dawn on Saturday. My work schedule stretched from Thursday evening all the way to Saturday morning, with additional shifts on Sunday and Tuesday. I used to check in on Thursday night and wouldn't see my home again until Saturday morning. And that was the hardest part of this otherwise wonderful job. I had to rearrange my entire life just to adapt, but eventually I settled in. Honestly, the work itself was fantastic, and most of my colleagues were women, which gave the place a unique atmosphere. After just a few days on the job, Thursday rolled around. I was supposed to stay until Saturday morning before heading home, but that Thursday lit the spark. The very spark that turned my whole life upside down and forced me to leave my job. Before I dive into the rest of the story, my friend, let me pause for a quick sponsor break. But keep this in mind, everything you're hearing is written text, meant to be read for a small fee. This isn't a personal experience, nor am I asking you to interact or pay up. On the contrary, I always warn you about these platforms. They can literally swallow your money and leave you with nothing. These sites couldn't care less about consequences, accountability, or the day of judgment. And in fact, there's a good chance, maybe 80%, that they're forbidden in our faith. That's exactly why I stay away from this field. And my advice to you is skip it entirely. Don't even think about it. You matter to me more than anything, my friend. That's why I need to tell you this. If you don't take my advice and stay away from this site, and every site like it, you're literally drowning your money, never to recover it again. As for me, I'm just doing what I must to make up for YouTube's dead earnings these days. I hope I've made everything clear enough. Hold on, before we continue this exciting episode, let me tell you something interesting. Aziz, one of my subscribers, is 30 years old. He worked in an ordinary office job, constantly longed for a brighter future. He was always short on cash, chasing opportunities, yet unsure where to begin. Until one day, he came across my story about Pocket Broker, and that's when everything started to change. Once Aziz went through Pocket Broker's beginner training program, he conquered the financial markets in just 1 month and his life changed forever. Now he travels the world, indulging in everything he desires. And if us are looking for Islamic finance, Pocket Broker provides a fully halal trading account, entirely interest-free and fully compliant with Sharia law. Use this platform and watch your money fly in a way that matches your beliefs. If you're ready to risk it all and live on the edge, start trading on Packet Broker today. Sign up with my promo code and grab a 100% bonus on your first deposit. Who knows? Your success story might be the next one I share with my subscribers. Don't forget to check everything. The links are all in the video description. Back to Rayhana's story, she said, I arrived at the hospital after sunset, clocked in, and her actual shift began. Everything was very calm and stable, and the hospital was completely quiet. With me were 3 nurses and another doctor, and we were inside one room, checking on the patients at regular intervals. Around 10 in the evening, I made my rounds to check on the patients. When I returned to the ward, the nurses each headed to their designated sections, conducting careful rounds to ensure every need was met and making sure every patient received their medication. Alone in the room, I went over my files, scribbling down the medications I needed right next to, or really within, my own quarters. There existed an emergency anesthesia room meant for urgent surgical procedures before patients entered the OR. Usually, one of the hospital's anesthesiologists occupied it, yet when it stood empty, with no patient in sight, it became a secret refuge. A small haven where staff could rest and escape the chaos for a while. As I was going through the files, I had the Quran playing loudly on my phone, filling the quiet, empty room. Suddenly, the employee in the adjacent anesthesia room, separated from me by nothing more than a thin curtain, started tapping on the table in a peculiar rhythm. It was as if he were wearing headphones, lost in the music he was listening to. I sought refuge in God from Satan and thought to myself, clearly the employee hasn't noticed that I'm playing the Quran. He'll probably hear it now and stop banging on the table. I couldn't see him directly because of the curtain between us, yet I could tell he was moving, sitting, and working. Just so you know, the room I'm in is very large, divided into 2 sections, like 2 separate rooms separated by a curtain. And the entrance to these 2 sections is a big door right beside me. So, one of the nurses came in and took a seat beside me. I couldn't help but notice the staff member knocking on the table. Turns out this nurse was new as well, from the same batch. We were both irritated. The way the anesthesia guy kept tapping felt intentional. I stood up, heading toward her to say, "You can't just do this!" So I pulled aside the curtain, and to my shock, the room was entirely empty. The shock was intense. Only moments ago, I had heard the sound of knocking on the table, and the nurse beside me had heard it too, a silent witness to the strange event. I dismissed it, thinking it could be from somewhere outside the room, yet it felt as if the sound was coming from inside, repeating itself in the exact same manner, over and over. Every time I stayed in that place at night, I heard the same sounds, and I was absolutely certain they were coming from the same room. Logically, when you're sitting there and hear a sound in front of you, you can tell exactly where it's coming from. It's impossible to imagine it, especially when there are just a few meters between you and the sound. That's when I realized how strange it was, and decided to ignore it completely. And if I was alone in that room, I'd just open the middle curtain and suddenly the noise would stop. One night while I was on duty with 3 nurses, an elderly lady entered the room. She greeted us warmly, "Peace be upon you," and walked straight toward the bathroom. It wasn't exactly allowed. The restroom was meant for the female staff, but it was rarely used anyway. We didn't mind at all. The woman walked in quietly and disappeared into the bathroom. We witnessed it with our own eyes. She opened the door and stepped inside. While we all looked on, we noticed it, greeted her politely, and kept talking. But the minutes dragged on, and she never came out while we were still there. Noticed that the bathroom key was left outside, just as it was last time. Usually we carry it inside to lock the door ourselves. If it's outside, it's a sure sign the bathroom is empty. Plus, the door lock has some problems, so we rely on a manual lock to make sure it's secure when nobody's in there. I froze in shock and ran to the bathroom door. It was locked from the outside. I asked them, "Did she get out?" They replied, "No, how could she?" I opened the door, and the bathroom was empty. This is according to the nurses who saw everything clearly. And we were left in utter disbelief. We still have no idea what happened. One day, a nurse came in with her son, a lively 5-year-old. That night, he sat quietly eating while we went through patient files. When he finished, he got up to wash his hands in the bathroom. Strangely, he stood frozen by the bathroom door for several minutes. I asked him, "Sweetie, why aren't you going in? Want me to open the door for you?" He shook his head. "No, I'm just waiting for the people inside to come out." I asked him, "What people?" "The bathroom's empty." The boy replied, "No, just a little while ago, people went in, and I'm still waiting for them to come out." We stood there with the nurses and opened the bathroom door. And it was indeed empty, but the boy insisted that a large number of people had gone in at once and hadn't come out. So what did he actually witness? I honestly have no idea. There were so many strange events that eventually pushed me to leave my job and dive into something entirely new. I'll only reveal the rest if you ask for it. And for today's episode, Rehana hasn't recounted all the stories she went through. If you want to keep following her journey inside the ICU, make sure to comment and let me know. And my dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you receive the upcoming episodes. I am Ali Ahmed. Goodbye.